I'm glad that Hillary took the phrase "turn the page." It's a good one, but this is an example of not turning the page. We have just gone through one of the most secretive administrations in our history, and not releasing, I think, these records. At the same time, Hillary, as you're making the claim that this is the basis for your experience, I think is a problem. Part of what we have to do is invite the American people back to participate in their government again. Part of what we need to do is rebuild trust in our government again.
There's the word trust.
Being open and transparent and accountable to the American people. And that's one of the hallmarks of my previous work in the state legislature, in the United States Senate, making sure that Americans know where our money is going, what earmarks are out there, what kinds of pork barrel spending is being done, who's bundling money for who. And that, I think, is part of the job of the next president, is making Americans believe that our government is working for them, because right now they don't feel like it's working for them. They feel like it's working for special interests, and it's working for corporations.
He's almost off the charts.
Part of the reason that
You can cut it.
Republicans, I think, are obsessed with you.
It was an incredible response, because it stated how that was a Democratic primary debate, and it stated how Democrats felt. And the key word in all of this is trust. They feel like they've lost trust in this administration, in this government, and they want that trust back. Let me just do 30 seconds. The problem now going forward is, I read Daily Kos and I read MoveOn.org, and I'm often in it and focused on it. They don't realize, and you in this audience probably have a certain assumption about what I do and who I talk to, and you guys actually have no idea how often I have had conversations with, discussions with Democrats in the House and in the Senate, even the presidential candidates. But that doesn't matter for some people, because they are just so angry. I will tell you this. In fact, it's not even anger, because anger can be, at times, a good emotion. There's hatred in the lexicon today. We can achieve so much when we're working together. We can achieve so much in a debate. And I do believe that Senator Clinton will be the next president. But we will not achieve anything if the next administration breeds the same amount of hate that we have now. In no circumstance whatsoever does hatred help. It only hurts, it only divides. So do me a favor, New York City, a little bit less hatred. You know, fight it out. You're going to be successful. You all are going to be applauding and cheering in the next election night. Just don't, you know.
Let's let Frank feel the love.
I got nothing to say, sir.
Frank, you're forming a question in my mind, which is about what seemed to be the very effective use of all this kind of warlike language by this administration, particularly after 9/11, but I'll ask that later. Drew.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is, Frank, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, I like you.
Yeah, but don't touch me in the future.
Didn't mean to invade your space. Sorry about that. As a psychologist, I can't really stop myself from beginning with an experiment, so that's what I'd like to do. The subjects are all of you. Okay, I'd like you to remember the following pairs of words: ocean, moon; tie, glasses; face, floor. Okay, do y'all have those in mind? And now I want you to count backwards in your head from 100 to 95. Just nod when you get there. Okay, good. Got some mathematicians in the room. Now, when I raise my hand, what I want you to do, as soon as I raise my hand, is just to say out loud, and you really need to say it out loud, the first automobile that comes to your mind. Are you ready? Okay. No consensus. It fits with what we saw, I think, which is this is clearly a Democratic crowd. And now what I'd like to do is I'm going to raise my hand, and this time, again, as soon as my hand goes up, I'd like you just to shout out the first laundry detergent that comes to your mind? You ready? Well, isn't that interesting? Do you notice what percent said Tide? I would estimate it at about 80, probably about 80%. That's kind of low for this experiment, probably because I used too many words in between. The market share of Tide is 41%. Procter & Gamble would love this experiment. You should tell them about it, Frank. The market share is 80%, and in a room from anywhere from 10 people all the way up to 2,000 people, I can consistently get somewhere between 80 and 95% of people to say Tide. Well, how did I do it? The way that I did it is I made use of a property of how our brains and how our minds work, and that has to do with networks of association. Networks of association are, I primed you using the word pair ocean-moon. What that did was to activate a network of associations that included ocean, moon, waves, and tide. Now, waves and tide were never active in your mind consciously. They were essentially at a higher state of latent unconscious activation. They'd just gone up in their level of activation because what a network of associations is nothing other than a network of, or an interconnected set of thoughts and images and ideas and memories and emotions that have been connected up typically through experience. When I then send laundry detergents, it activated the network of laundry detergents. You'll notice that there's only one thing at the intersection of those two networks. That is Tide. It's doubly activated. That's why it rose to consciousness. That's why most people in the room, double the number of the market share of Tide, said Tide. I might add to you that I often, in doing this experiment, this demonstration, will ask people why they said Tide, and I'll get a range of answers. You know, that's what my mother used, or that's what I have at home, or I just picture that orange box. The mistake you can very often get from focus groups is to ask people conscious questions about unconscious processes. That's one of the things that the Kerry team did in 2004 when they asked focus groups, you know, do you think he should respond to the Swift boat ads, or should he respond to Abu Ghraib? It's like asking someone, what do you think's happening in your pancreas right now? We have no more access to what's happening in those unconscious networks than we do in what's happening in our pancreas or our spleen. So it's not a good question to ask. Now, the next question I would ask is, actually, I just can't stop myself from doing this. This is just about a demonstration of what networks are active at Fox.
J-Lo's new song, Jenny from the Block, all about Lopez roots, about how she's still a neighborhood gal at heart. But folks from that street in New York, the Bronx section, sound more likely to give her a curb job than a blow job or block party. The New York Post, sorry about that slip up there. I have no idea how that happened, but it won't happen again. And that's your news. And the G Block, as Fox reports this Monday, November the 4th.
Now, the first thing I have to say is it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But the second is that actually, you know how he says, I don't know how that happened, but I can tell you it won't happen again. Well, actually, we do know how that happened, and that is it happened just the way I activated those networks before, and that is that block and blow start with the same three letters. Your brain is his brain was simultaneously activating both block and blow and anything else that began with BLO. There was apparently a second network active that was activated by Jennifer Lopez's undulating half-naked body that led to that Freudian slip. And that explains the convergence of those two networks. You can actually produce slips of the tongue like this about a third of the time experimentally. Now, suppose somebody knew how to shape and activate networks in voters. Well, somebody does, and they're called the GOP. And let me give you an example. This is a word that used to be central to what it meant to be a Democrat. This was the term that was used by Thomas Jefferson. It was used liberally by all the founders. But it became associated over a number of years with a number of rather unseemly phrases. So that liberal became associated with liberal elite, big government, tax and spend liberals, cut and run liberals, liberal special interests. All those things became associated because over time they were repeated over and over and over, so that they became, essentially they metastasized from the minds of really brilliant wordsmiths on one side of the aisle into even the
You're touching me again.
sorry. Must be something unconscious going on. But in any case,
No, it's very conscious.
But what essentially
activated your frame.
what essentially is happening is that those networks have essentially metastasized from the minds of conservative think tanks into the minds of even liberal and independent voters. So just to finish out the network, we've got Volvo driving, sushi eating, latte drinking, godless atheists. There you have it, a liberal. And that's why it has actually been over 40 years since a Democratic candidate for president called himself a liberal. That was Lyndon Johnson.